Okay, Open Your Mind Internet Radio, we are back. That was just a couple of tracks there that we had, and we do have our second guest online now at the moment it's from the US of A.
US of A, yes.
We have Mr. Garnet Schulhauser.
Now, Garnet is going to just tell us about his experience regarding the spiritual side. I heard about Garnet through a relative who told me about Garnet, and he said that this story was very fascinating, very, very interesting information. And I thought, you know what, we must get Garnet on the show and tell us about his experience, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have experienced some kind of connection with their spirit guide, and Garnet is one of the people that have done that. So we're going to find out about Garnet's story. Good evening, Garnet. How are you?
It's fine, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad at all, not too bad at all. If you want to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then tell us about your story, that would be great.
Okay, well, actually, I'm in Victoria in Canada, the west coast of Canada, not USA. Anyway, I was a practicing lawyer until 2008 when I retired, and now I'm an author. I'm writing books, and I was raised in Saskatchewan in Canada, and I was raised in a Roman Catholic family, a very religious Roman Catholic family and I served as an altar boy for many years and followed all the rules of the church. And when I left home, I started to doubt a lot of the things that I was taught by the Catholic Church. And by the time I hit my 30s, I had rejected a lot of the things that they had taught me. And so then I was casting about for another paradigm to latch onto, another set of beliefs that I could grasp onto that made sense to me. And I constantly asked myself the questions over the years, all the big eternal life questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What is my life's purpose? And what happens to me after I die? And then one day in 2007, when I was still practicing law, my life was transformed and all my questions were answered. It all came about when I met a homeless man on the street. And should I go on to tell the story about that?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Well, as I say, I was still practicing law, and I was strolling down the street one day in my navy blue suit and shirt and tie, and looking very much like a button-down, straight-laced corporate lawyer. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumps out in front of me. And he looked very much like a typical homeless person. He had long, stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty, slept-in clothes. But I didn't go around him like I usually did when I encountered these people on the street, because this guy had these amazing, dazzling blue eyes, and they shone like two little blue stars. And they were penetrating deep within me. It was a very penetrating gaze. I felt like he's looking down into the depths of my soul, and that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done in my life, all my hopes and aspirations and my fears and anxieties. And I just sensed he knew everything about me, but we had never met, so it was very strange. But I didn't feel violated, because at the same time, his eyes were sending me this gush, this wave of pure, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security. And so it was a wonderful feeling, and I just stood there like a deer caught in the headlights, soaking it all in. And I'm not sure how long I was there. It was like I was in a time warp. But after a while, he broke the spell, the homeless man did, by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. So when I finally collected my wits, I decided I had to go into the store to try to find this guy, to find out who he was and why he had stopped me and what he was all about. So I went into the store, but he was nowhere to be seen there. I came back out onto the street, walked up and down, gazing every which way to see if I could spot this man, but he had seemingly disappeared into thin air. So the next day, I resolved that I had to go back to the same street at the same time and see if I could find him. So I did. Back to the same street. I walked up and down, several blocks for 15 or 20 minutes, and I was about to lose hope when I spotted him sitting alone on a bench. So I walked up to him and I said to him, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "Well, I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." But then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in, and I said to him, "Why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because you look like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish." Well, he gave me a big grin, and he said, "Looks can be deceiving." He said, "You look like you're a successful lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade. So he said to me, if you like, you can just turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find your answers and all those emails waiting for you on your computer, or you can sit down and have a chat with me. So luckily, my intuition told me that this man was a special kind of guy, and I really needed to speak to him. And after all, what did I have to lose? A half an hour of my time? Not a big deal. So I sat down and we began a conversation, a dialogue that went on off and on for several months. And I found out his name was Albert, and that he was really one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he showed up as a homeless man for the first 3 times that he came into my life. And he told me that I was the only one who could see him as the homeless man, that nobody else on the street that day could see him at all. I could not only see him, but I could touch him. He felt very real, very physical. And so I asked him why he had shown up as the homeless man, because after the first 3 visits, he was no longer present in a physical sense, but he spoke to me by telepathy. So we communicated by telepathy. He was a voice in my head, and that's how we communicated after the first 3 times. And when I asked him why he had shown up as the homeless man initially, he said it was his way of easing me into the conversation, because if he had just started talking to me as a voice in my head, I likely would have thought I was losing my mind. And I think he's probably right. So it was a good ploy on his part. It was really a great way for him to introduce himself to me. And then after that, when he just communicated by telepathy, I recognized his voice and I knew who he was. And I wasn't concerned about my sanity. And I knew that we were just having a conversation, or I was having a conversation with this guy who had originally appeared as a homeless man. So that's how I met my spirit guide, and that was the beginning of the transformation of my life.
Excellent. And, when was the last time you actually spoke to him?
Oh, I've been speaking to him off and on ever since. It varies. Sometimes he sort of goes off air for several weeks, and then other times he's back on. And I've been communicating with him recently. Actually, he's still around. It's
amazing that as you said, you get to a stage. People get to a stage where you say, what's the meaning of life? Why am I here? What's my purpose? And when you start asking them questions, that's when the journey begins for an awful lot of people. And it's good that, in a way, you were a lawyer, because you had the skeptical hat on, and you kind of probably didn't take it, it didn't kind of fall for it straight away. You kind of examined it, you questioned it, and you thought, well, what's going on? And then he proved, by his actions, that he was who he said he was. Now, did you go on a journey with him, or did you find out anything about them questions that you wanted to ask? I mean, why are we here? What's the meaning of life?
Well, yeah, the answer is yes. I did go on some, my first encounters with him were a dialogue, and I asked him questions and he answered it, and that's what I described in my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. So I'll talk about that. The second book, it was a sort of a very much different encounter. It was a series of astral adventures with Albert. But let me go back to what he disclosed to me about my big questions. So the answer to who are we? Well, we're all eternal souls. We were created by the source, which some people refer to as God or the Creator. We were created by the source. We were form part of the source, and so we're connected to each other and to everything else in the universe. And why did we come here to Earth? Well, we came here by our own choice. We chose to incarnate in a physical body, in a human body on Earth. And before we got here, we were on the spirit side, which is a wonderful, lovely place with everything's all positive. There's no negative emotions. It's what some religions refer to as heaven. It's an amazing paradise. That's our true home. That's where we came from. That's where we always return. And so when he described this to me, and he said, of course, you're not allowed to remember all that once you incarnate, because that's just part of the test of having an incarnation on Earth, is you forget all of that. And I said, well, why would I want to leave a beautiful, happy paradise like the spirit side and come to this planet Earth, which is no walk in the park, as you all know. It's a tough place to live in.
It is indeed, yeah.
And he said it's because we wanted to learn and experience things that aren't available to us on the spirit side. So we want to complete the knowledge that we have on the spirit side with actual hands-on experiences, hands-on learning. And so that's why we come. And before we incarnate, we each prepare a life plan, which sets out the major details of our upcoming lives. And we prepare this so that we can experience the things that we want to experience and to encounter for the evolution of our souls, because that's what we're all trying to do, is evolve as souls. And so in this life plan, we set out the major things like where we're going to be born, the first language we learn, the identity of our parents and siblings and friends and other relatives. And that's all set up very deliberately in our part. And we choose all that. We choose it freely. We get advice from other souls as to what we may want to include or not include, but we freely choose it. We have the final decision. But when we get here, as you guys know, we're not allowed to remember that we have a life plan.
That's right, yeah.
And so we don't really know when we're here. It's like I don't remember where I came from. I don't remember I have a life plan. And so we have to sort of try to find our way, sometimes stumbling along blindly, through life to try to get to where we had planned to go to. And because we have free will here, our lives are not predetermined, because our free will take us off in various directions, and because we don't remember where we should be going, we're often going to stray off course, and we make mistakes and we take wrong turns. But that's just all part of the challenge of a human incarnation on our planet. And that's all designed very deliberately. Like, as Albert said, the Earth School is a very, very tough school, one of the toughest in the universe. And he said all humans who are now living on Earth should pat themselves on the back, because they had to have a lot of courage to come to this tough school, because there's a lot of other easier places to incarnate in the universe. This is a tough one. So that's why we came here. His other startling revelations that he told me about, which fly in the face of a lot of the things that Christian holy men have been preaching for centuries. Like they always said, well, God's this supreme being. I always had this vision of God sitting in a gold throne up in the clouds, and pulling puppet strings and making things happen. He says the source does not control events in our lives, and the source does not make rules for us to follow, which again flies in the face of what my Catholic upbringing had told me, where there's a whole bunch of rules that came from God, and we better follow them. And if we don't and don't make amends before we die, we could end up in an awful place called hell. So Albert says, not only does the source not make rules, but there's no judgment or punishment after we die. There is no hell. There is no devil. That's all just fictitious inventions of Christian holy men over the centuries. And none of that happens. So no matter what you do in this life, no matter how many wrong turns you make, or maybe even how bad you perform, you always end up back on the spirit side from where you came after you die. So that's a whole, that's like 180 degrees from a lot of the things I was taught as a child. Makes sense to me, and I truly believe when he told me that is what happens to us.
Yeah, well, we've had that kind of Catholic upbringing as well, as we grew up, and we ask questions as well. But here's the thing, Garnet, which my question is, we hear this an awful lot about we have free will, and I know to a certain extent we have free will, but to be honest with you, our free will has been removed from us because of the powers that be, or if you want to call them powers that be, or the elites or whatever, or the governments. But basically, there's things that we'd all probably like to do, but we know that if we did, like maybe, drive a car without registered documents, or don't wear your seatbelt, or might go a little bit faster, or, there's all certain things. And free will means, when the spirit or source creator turns around and says, well, you have free will, do what you want. But in a way we don't, because if you do that, you could be jailed and locked up, which is man-made. But basically, that's my kind of argument when it comes to the whole, well, you have free will, you can choose. Sometimes circumstances in your life doesn't allow you to have free will. That's kind of my argument on it.
Yeah, no, I see your point. But what Albert would answer to that is he would say, when you're here, you have the free will to deliberately choose to break secular laws if you choose, and to suffer the punishment. So you're right, if you break some laws, you may end up getting fined or going to jail, but you still have the free will to choose, do I want to do that or not do that? And so that's really the basis of it, is that you have the free will to follow the laws or not to follow the laws, and if you don't follow the laws on earth here, you will suffer the consequences. His main point is that no matter what you do on earth, if you break secular laws, you may suffer punishment here, but you are not punished in the afterlife for whatever you do. So there's a big difference. For sure you have to follow secular laws. That's just part of life on earth. Depending on which country you're in, they may be onerous or they may be pretty lax, but you do have to mind your P's and Q's from secular laws, or else you could end up in jail. You could be punished here for sure.
And does Albert believe that, so you're saying there's no repercussions when you go over to spirit. So that means that he's technically saying there's no karma.
Oh, yeah, no, there's no karma in the sense that what some people believe is that karma is sort of like a wheel that you get trapped on, and if you do something bad, in one life, then karma says you have to come back and make amends in another life, and you have to keep on coming back and back until you get rid of all your karmic debt. Albert says that doesn't happen because there's no law of the universe that makes you follow the wheel of karma, and there's nobody who makes you come back. So after every incarnation, you have free choice to decide: do I want to go back to Earth and try to do better the next time, or do I want to just quit and go somewhere else? So karma is a way of measuring, the good deeds and the bad deeds on the planet. And if you finish a life and you got negative karma, most souls will feel a moral imperative to come back to Earth and try to balance their karma, but they're not compelled to do so. And if they choose to go somewhere else or stop incarnating on Earth, they can do so. So it's not an immutable law of the universe like the law of gravity. It's sort of a system for measuring the good and the bad that you've done over your series of lives. And if you end up with a very huge negative karmic debt, as a soul, and souls are good people who want to evolve and do good things. When you get back to the spirit side, you're going to say, well, I've really messed up in some of my lives on Earth, so I'm going to go back and try to fix it up and do some good things and try to rebalance my karma. But it's a very much of a voluntary thing on the part of each soul.
Okay. And for people who want to get in touch with their spirit guide, I suppose there's two questions in this. One, why did your guide choose to appear to you, and for what reason? And how can people get their guides to, communicate with them?
Well, to answer the first part, Albert chose to communicate with me, to come directly in contact with me in that fashion because he wanted me to write about his revelations and about the astral trips he would take me on. And so that was very deliberate. He thought that I was going to be one of his channels, and I would channel his messages by writing books. So that's why he came to me directly. In terms of how does everyone else communicate with their guides, well, everyone has 3 or 4 or 5 spirit guides, as you know. And they can change during the course of your life as your needs change. But they're always trying to communicate with you. They're with you 24/7. They never leave you. They're watching what you're doing, and they're trying to send you messages. And what they're trying to do is to give you some guidance about where you should be going, which fork you should take in the road when you come to a fork in the road, and what decision you should make when you have a decision in front of you. They're trying to guide you, except that in most cases, their messages are very subtle. So rather than sort of direct telepathic communication like I had with Albert, for most people, their guides are giving you messages that are like flashes of intuition, a whisper in your mind, a gut feeling, a coincidental event, things like that are very, very easy to miss. And because our minds are so cluttered with all the other thoughts that go through our heads every day, I read somewhere that we have 50,000 thoughts every day. Our minds are so cluttered about what happened last week and last month and what's going to happen tomorrow that we often miss these messages from our guides. And so the way to sort of be better at listening to these messages is to quiet our minds. We have to sit quietly, try to meditate, try to get rid of the clutter in our minds so that the messages from our guides can come through. And if you do that, and it's not easy, but if you do that, you will be better. Become better at picking out their messages and better understanding what they're trying to tell you. It's not an easy road to go on, that's for sure.
No, it takes a while. We had Mark Impey, International Medium, on the show there a couple of weeks ago, and Mark was talking about attuning to your guide and trying to tune in to be able to link with them and get messages from your guide. But just going on what's going on at the moment with the planet and the Earth, has Albert told you anything about what's coming down the line?
No, he didn't give me any of those glimpses, I think quite deliberately so. What he did say was that, and this message, he was echoing a message that I got from the Council of Wise Ones, who I met with on the spirit side. Council of Wise Ones is this sort of committee of very wise and advanced souls whose job it is to oversee all the incarnations on Earth. And so on my first astral trip with Albert, he took me to the spirit side, and I met with the Council of Wise Ones. And the chair of that committee, her name was Sophia, said she gave me a message that she wanted me to take back to my fellow humans. And she said she wouldn't say what was going to happen, but she said that we're at a very crucial point in our development. Humans are. She said we have very advanced technology. but our emotional and spiritual intelligence has not kept pace. And that means that we let too many times our negative emotions control our lives, and that results in violence and conflicts and killings and genocide and wars and other conflicts. And so she said, we need to get our negative emotions under control, because we have, weapons of mass destruction that can destroy all life on our planet. And we have to be careful that these do not get unleashed, because if they do, then our civilization will end up crashing and burning like some of the other human civilizations in our past, like Atlantis, Lemuria, and a few others.
Yeah.
And so she said, we really have to focus on raising our vibrations by discarding our negative emotions and embracing love and compassion. And if we can do that, we can get over this crucial point and go on to the next step before we destroy ourselves. So they didn't say what was going to happen. They wouldn't tell me that. They said that we really have to work hard at getting there. And so that was one of the messages I had to take back, was we have to really get our act together, or we will end up like some of our other civilizations that crashed and burned in the past.
Okay, so I totally agree. Atlantis was definitely one that they had the advanced technology and they weren't mature enough to be able to handle it. But based on your experience now with your spirit guide, what's your understanding of what religion is?
Well, religion is nothing more than it's sort of it's almost like a set of beliefs set up. It's almost like a club where people who set up a system of beliefs, and they have very specific beliefs and very specific rules. So the people who follow religions have to follow these rules. So if you're a Catholic, you follow the Catholic rules. If you're an Anglican, you follow the Anglican rules. And if you're a Jewish person, you follow the rules for Judaism. And so they all set up with very definite rules, and they all have a hierarchy of people who control the religion and the people, and they are all trying to control people most of the time through guilt and fear.
Yeah.
The fear is, the guilt is, God gave us these rules. If you break these rules, God's going to be offended, and if you don't make amends, God will punish you. And you'll go to hell after you die. So there's the fear and the guilt. That's a great control mechanism. So that's what religion is. Spiritual people, on the other hand, don't have a set of rules given to them by somebody else.
Yeah.
They just sort of align themselves with spirit, put themselves in tune with the people on the other side, and they recognize that there's no need to have man-made rules or a place of worship or even any need to worship, because the God or the Spirit does not need to be worshipped. That's just a religious thing. And so that's the major difference.
Exactly. And you don't need to go to a man in a little room to tell him all your sins. You can just go direct to source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I see you've been to confession too.
Oh, a long time ago. I tell you, I haven't been inside of a box for a long time. Trust me. I'm more spiritual than I am. Trust me. I moved away from the Catholic Church a long time ago. We all know that it's there just to control man. But Garnet, we have a few questions in from our listeners because we have a chat room here. So Steve is going to go through the questions with you.
Yeah, Garnet, some great information, a lot of interest on the chat room there in relation to the subject matter. I think you've already answered the first question. The first question was from Graham. Graham was saying, would you agree that all religions are scams and are anti-spiritual by default?
Well, I wouldn't say they're scams. I mean, I think they have a legitimate purpose. But I just think that, for the most part, organized religions are misguided. They have this vision of a supreme being who controls everything on earth and needs to be worshipped and praised and paid homage to, and that who will judge us when we die. And that's just all part of their mechanism to control people. And so they're just misguided. I don't think that those people deliberately are misleading people. I just think that's just the way they've been brought up. And over the centuries, like with the Catholic Church, some of the early church leaders just developed these beliefs and these rules. And, the foot soldiers of the world, the priests and the nuns, they don't think they're deceiving anybody. They honestly believe it. So I think it's a bit harsh to say they're scams, but they clearly are misguided institutions that according to Albert, their beliefs are just way off. They're just they're not even close to telling people the way it really is in terms of life on earth and life after death. Yeah,
I think that's a good explanation, because to say they're all scams, I think that's kind of a little bit unfair. I just say, and I agree that there are people in there, because I know a couple of priests, and they firmly believe what they're doing is the absolute right thing. And again, who's to say it's not the right thing for them? But we'll find out in the fullness of time anyway. Karen is wondering. Karen is in. I keep saying Karen's in California. She's not. Karen is in Oregon, and Karen is wondering: does your spirit guide know whether or not we can avoid the predicted catastrophes by changing our frequencies and taking physical as well as spiritual action?
Yeah, I'm not sure what she means by the predicted disasters, but I know a lot of people think that there's some bad stuff that may be coming. Yeah. We absolutely can avoid disaster, according to the Council of Wise Ones in Albert, just by focusing hard on getting rid of our negative emotions, controlling them, and embracing love and compassion. If we can do that, we absolutely can avoid disaster.
Okay, that's good to know. Samantha is wondering, how do we know how old our soul is? Is there a way of finding that out?
Yeah, there probably is once we get back to the spirit side. I didn't ask Albert that question. We're eternal souls, but we've been spun out from the source at sort of different times. Now, time is a bit of a quirky thing. On the spirit side, they don't have linear time like we do with the past, present, and the future. On the spirit side, it's just one big now. There's no past, there's no future. Everything's now. And so to say, how old is your soul, the question on the spirit side is a bit irrelevant because it doesn't relate to anything. So, but in terms of Earth time, I've never asked Albert that, and I did ask him how many lives I've had on Earth before, how many lifetimes I've lived, and he said several hundred, but he wouldn't tell me the exact number. And to him, it was just sort of like a question that doesn't have any relevance, so I'm not going to bother trying to answer it. So, in terms of how old am I when I get to the spirit side, that question won't have any real meaning.
Yeah,
because there's only a now.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. What was I going to say? Yeah, I think you've answered that question. So, is a human soul? No, sorry. Is there proof that humans have souls that are made by Source?
Well, there's no proof in a scientific sense here on Earth. I mean, that's something you can't prove. I mean, the fact that I spoke to my spirit guide and went to the spirit side, and the people who have NDEs that they went to heaven and back, you can't prove that in a scientific sense, not yet, because we don't have the capabilities of doing that. Our scientists don't. So I can't prove it. I'm very convinced that I have a soul, and so do you and everyone else on this planet, and that our souls survive our physical death and we go back to the spirit side. Yeah. Albert has told me that. He's taken me to the spirit side on several astral trips, and so I've seen for myself, so I firmly believe it. But can I prove it? No, I can't.
Okay. Can I just ask one question that's come to mind? I'll forget about it if I don't ask. You talked about your connection to your guides and about, the intuition or the gut feeling and all that. Why did Albert, I know you said Albert appeared to you because you're going to pass this information on, but you were a lawyer who wasn't really tuned in really to any of this. And I'm just wondering why Albert felt that he picked you for this when there's obviously, I'm just curious because there's people out there who are trying to tune into their guides for years and it's just not happening. So.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Why me? I've asked myself that question because I wasn't trying to contact my guides. I wasn't even sure I had spirit guides. I was sort of totally uninformed about all that until Albert came along. So why did he pick me? I asked him that. He said that he and I had planned all this before I was born. That was part of my life plan, and that I had picked him as one of my spirit guides, and that he had agreed to be one of my spirit guides, and he had indicated and allowed me to put in my life plan that we would meet at the time we did, so that he could give me his revelations. I could write books about it. And I said, well, why me? There's lots of people in the world. He said, well, you're not the only one. I have lots of channels that I communicate through all over the world, so you're just one of them. And I picked you because you had some previous writing experience in some of your other lives, and I thought that might be something that would be useful and allow you to sort of become an author and write books about what I'm telling you. So that was why, that was his explanation, was that just some of my previous lives I had writing experience, and he thought that I'd be a good candidate to appear, when he did in 2007, and then lead me down the path where I could write my books about what he showed me and what he told me.
Excellent. Okay, Steve, you got more questions for Garnet?
Yeah, I have another question here, but I've already kind of touched on an answer on the chat room. You can just let me know, Garnet, whether it's correct or incorrect. But Samantha was wondering, about the human soul. If the human soul were to reincarnate, could we come back as a rabbit or some other form? Now, I spoke to a lady, Angel Rose O'Grady. She read Akashic Records, and I asked her the same question, and she said that when we leave the earthly plane, we go back to the spirit world, we make the decision as to what we want to come back or what we need to come back to this earthly plane. We decide what we want to come back as to experience whatever we need to experience. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. And the short answer, I think what you were getting at initially was that can we incarnate as animals? The answer is yeah, we can, because animals have souls, and they return back to the spirit side when they're done. But for the most part, when somebody first starts incarnating on this planet, we will often choose a very simple life, to sort of test the waters, if you will, when you're first coming to planet Earth, because it's a tough planet. And so a lot of times we'll start incarnating in a more simple life, like a rabbit or a fox or a duck or whatever it may be, because those are very simple lives. They're easy to understand, and it's a good way of sort of getting our feet wet on this planet. And then gradually we'll move up to more complex lives, human life being the most complex, because we're very complex creatures, and there's lots of stuff going on in our lives that doesn't happen to animals. So, when you die, will you come back as a rabbit? You could. Chances are you probably won't, because you've probably already been there.
Yeah, okay. There's just one of the ladies in the chat room was just saying that Dr. Simon Parks says human souls can only reincarnate as human beings. But again, I've heard from different sources, and you've just confirmed it there as well, that may be incorrect. So again, probably more investigation needed on that one.
Yeah. Human souls are there's nothing special about a human soul. A human soul is a soul. It's the same kind of soul that's in an animal. Human souls, I mean, if you incarnate on Earth, when you decide you don't need to come back to Earth anymore, you can incarnate into any number of different planets in the universe, various different life forms. You're not restricted to Earth or to the human, so you have full choice. But you tend to sort of you tend to want to make progress, and so if you've experienced a bunch of difficult, complex lives, you probably aren't inclined to go back to a more simple life. But you may. It's entirely up to your choice. So souls are souls are souls, and it doesn't matter whether you're in a human or in a little green man on some planet, in some far galaxy. You're still the same soul. You're just going into different physical forms.
Okay, that's fair enough. I think we've put that one to bed. Chris is wondering, Garnet, do you think it might be possible that we have been conned into reincarnating by a negative force that has kidnapped our reality, and that maybe your guide may be part of this deception?
No, totally wrong. There are no evil spirits or evil creatures or things in the universe that are trying to misdirect us or misguide us. There are no evil spirits per se, so it just doesn't happen. There's no evil forces out there trying to do bad things to us. And so, no, our reincarnation has not been hijacked by anybody. It's a full and open process that we freely choose to participate in, and there's no, traps. There's no hidden evils anywhere. It's very much of a fully disclosed, open kind of process.
Okay, because one of the things that we talked about, again, we have guests on who talk about different things, and one of these groups of negatives are called the Archons. Have you ever heard of them?
No, I haven't.
Okay, that might be something to speak to Albert too when you speak to him next time, because there is a belief out there that there is a negative energies or entities out there called the Archons who have fooled us into thinking that when we get reincarnated, it's all got to do with them being in control, and it's just you die, you get reincarnated, and they chuck you out again, and you go through the whole process. And the belief on a few people we've had on is that the Archons are at the top of the food chain, and they can control our energies, and they can control the system. And basically, sometimes if people are talking to spiritual people, the belief is that they might not be spiritual people, they might be archonic, and it might be just all a part of the game. Now, we can't confirm or deny this, we're just going by what we're told, but maybe this might be something to speak to Albert about, because where he is, I'm sure he can see things better than we can, and he might be able to give you some information on that. And maybe if we go down the road and do a part 2, then you might be able to come back and tell us about what you found out.
Yeah, sure. I'll ask Albert about that. I can already tell you I know what his answer is, because the reincarnation process that I described to you is what he told me. And if there were people like archons who were controlling it, he would have told me about it. So, but I will ask him the question. I'll let you know next show.
Yeah, no, that'd be quite handy to know, because I know people are going to say that there's people have listened to our show before, and we've had other guests on talking about it, and it's one of these things. There is a book out that you can buy on Amazon called Interview with an Alien, and it was got to do with the nurse who actually was in Roswell at the time. And what she wrote down in the book was that it was controlled by an archonic network, and that the reincarnation thing was designed by them. Now, as I say, maybe it's something that we could find out. That'd be brilliant. But did Albert tell you anything about the actual death process? That when you die, I mean, is it the light at the end of the tunnel, or did he talk to you about anything like that?
Yeah, he did, because I asked him that question, like, after he had told me that, my soul will survive my physical death, and I said to him, well, what about the dying process? What happens? Like, will I be in pain? Will I be in anguish? He said generally when you die, it's a very smooth and easy transition. And in fact, he says you will leave your body just before your physical body dies. And so, for example, if you're going to die in a car crash, you will actually leave your physical body just before the impact. So you won't feel any pain, you won't feel the impact, you won't feel any distress or anxiety, because you'll be basically outside of your body, your soul will be, and you'll be watching the whole thing the last few seconds like you're watching a movie. So it'll be very, very easy transition. And he said then your spirit guides will come and basically take you by the hand and lead you over to the spirit side. He didn't say anything about a tunnel or a light, but he said that when you get the transition over to the spirit side, there you'll be met by a welcoming group of souls, and that'll be whoever you would sort of most like to see in your welcoming party. So it's different for everyone. And so it may be your parents and grandparents and siblings if they passed on, the people that you were closest to on Earth. They will all be there to welcome you when you get there, and that's just sort of to help you put yourself at ease, to help you make the transition from an earthly life to being a soul back on the spirit side. So he says it's a very exhilarating experience. These people just welcome you with unconditional love and wrap their arms around you, and they just help you transition back to the spirit side, because sometimes you need a little help, especially if you had a traumatic death, like somebody you were murdered, say, or you die in a horrible accident. Sometimes when your soul leaves, it's a bit bewildered about what has happened, and maybe a bit upset, and so you need a little bit of comforting when you get over to the spirit side. And that group of people is there to sort of help you realize that you're still alive, your soul is still intact, and all you've done is left your physical body behind. So anyway, that's the death process. He said it's very pleasant, and you won't feel any pain.
Well, that's good, because I've always said to people, I know where I'm going, I just don't know how I'm going to get there. So it's good. It's good to know. That's the second time I've actually heard that as well. I heard a story, is a book I was reading about this chap who was a regressional hypnotherapist, and he was speaking to this chap, and he was talking about a past life. And to cut long story short, himself and his girlfriend went off a cliff in the car, and basically before the car hit the water, their souls were taken out because they knew it was inevitable that they were going to die. So that kind of ties in with that. Now we have probably about 7 minutes left, and I know Steve has a few questions, and we're going to try and quick fire them over to you there, Garnet, if we can do that.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions.
Okay, well
I've got a lot of questions.
Just keep an eye on the time then, will we?
That's your department.
Right,
you
okay.
keep an eye on
and
the
then
time.
you at the end you'll go one more.
Yeah,
okay.
one more question.
We'll do 3 questions, okay?
3.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll go. Look,
they're all gems.
It's obviously
right.
We're going to have to do a part 2 with Garnet,
Okay.
but let's try
right.
3 anyway.
Right. Well, the first thing I want to say is what you're saying, Garnet, in relation to the spirits being removed and all that. I seen a great movie years and years ago. It's been remade, I think, several times, but it's a 1978 film called Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty. And in this movie, it's exactly as you say. He's just about to have a car crash, and the new spirit guide just removes the body, removes his soul from the body. But then he didn't actually die in the car crash, so his spirit had to be transplanted into another body. And it's a fantastic film if anyone hasn't seen it. But anyway, that's just one to mention. When you spoke about forgiving people, when Karen asked the question earlier about can we change, what may or may not happen, in the future by changing our frequencies. You said, yeah, if we start thinking positive and go down that road. And Karen says, can you ask Garnet about anger and honourable defence? We can't keep forgiving those who are paedophiles, etc. We must stop them and take away their power to harm others. She goes on to say, is he talking about embracing our enemies in love and forgiveness as opposed to stopping them?
Well, I think you can do both. You could certainly forgive people who do bad things, and you should forgive everyone. That doesn't mean you can't stop them. You don't have to acquiesce in their bad acts and what they're doing. So it's entirely okay to stop the bad people, the pedophiles, from doing what they're doing. That doesn't mean you can't forgive them and embrace them with love and compassion. It may seem like two different things, but it sort of is, but they're not mutually inconsistent. So stop them for sure, but forgive them and embrace them with love and compassion.
Yeah, I'd say if you stop them, fine, then they go to prison or whatever happens to them. But I suppose when you can actually embrace them and forgive them, then I believe that opens up a whole new. That actually kind of maybe I'm not going to say it transcends you to a different level, but it certainly transcends you to something different anyway. The fact that you can forgive someone who has done some wrong onto you.
Yeah, absolutely. Forgiveness is really key, and a lot of people have trouble with that. But you really have to be able to forgive everyone who's done you harm. And as I say, it doesn't mean you can't stop them or you get away from the danger. For sure you can, but you have to, after the fact, you have to forgive them and forgive them and everyone else, and to just embrace them with love and compassion, because that does help you to raise your vibrations. That's the direction we need to be going.
Exactly.
And part of that, of course, is if you forgive somebody, you can't be angry at them, and you can't hate them. So it gets rid of anger and hate and a lot of the other negative emotions that cause so many problems in our world, because with absolute forgiveness, all that other stuff disappears.
Exactly. That's what I'm going to say. If you forgive someone absolutely, then all the excess, the negative baggage that you are carrying around with you in relation to a particular event that happened or transpired, that goes away. It's like a final. That's it. It's end of story. Anyway, Samantha is wondering. I don't know what the relevance is, but does an oak tree have a soul? Like I'm guessing the way we with humans and animals have souls. She's wondering. I'm guessing it's, do plants have souls?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I never asked Albert that. My inclination is to think maybe not, but I never know. I mean, I'm often surprised when I ask Albert questions and he gives me an answer I'm not expecting. So I will ask Albert that question and maybe have an answer for you the next time.
I did hear that they do, but I was reading stuff about it. I know it sounds, but everything's energy, you see. So, but that's another story. Let's
pulling potatoes up and eating potatoes. I mean, well.
Well, no, that's allowed. It's a long story. We don't have time to cover. But we'll get to another time.
Anyway, Joan is wondering: do leaders, like say, I'm guessing she means the likes of say Hitler and so on and so forth. Do leaders who murder people have spirit guides? Or is their guide just purely psycho?
No, everyone has spirit guides. So Hitler had spirit guides as well. And no, they're not psycho. They're good people. They're trying to do their best for the people that they are coaching. Yeah. So what I understand from, actually, I should tell you that in my third book that's coming out in early 2016, I actually had a meeting with the soul that was Hitler. And as it turns out, most of the stuff, the bad things he did, it wasn't planned beforehand. He just got his negative emotions just totally run amok, and he wasn't listening to his guides who were trying to steer him on the right course. And he sort of went way off course, obviously horribly off course. But that's what happened. And his guides were good people who were trying to stop that all the violence that he was causing. He just wasn't listening to them.
Well, that's fair enough. I think proof is in the pudding, and I think we can agree on that one. Right, we're going to have to leave it there, Steve, because we're running out of time, because we have a few things to go through. But Garnet, again, that's fantastic information, and I think we're going to have to do a part 2, because there's so many questions there, that we'd love to find out, and I'm sure you're going to be in touch with Albert, and you'll be finding more information, so the next time we get you on, if you're up for doing that, that would be fantastic. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your details, all about your books and your website and stuff like that, so people know where to find you and where to get your books. So, Steve, over to you.
Yeah, Garnet, some good information. As Alan said, there are some questions that we didn't get to. And if anyone thinks that I'm rewording questions, I do apologise. That's not my intention, but I am trying to ask. Sometimes I'm trying to get 2 or 3 questions into the one question. But anyway, your first book you said is called Dancing on a Stamp. Have you got a website, or is there any other way people can contact you or check out your work?
Sure. Okay, let me tell you about all my books, and I'll give you my website information. My first book is Dancing on a Stamp. My second book, which was released at the end of March of this year, is called Dancing Forever with Spirit. And in that book, it details a series of astral trips that Albert took me on to the spirit side and to other planets in the universe, and to talk to various people on the spirit side and to visit the Akashic Records. So that's called Dancing Forever with Spirit. My third book, which will be released in early 2016, is called Dance of Heavenly Bliss, and it describes another set of astral adventures I had with my spirit guide Albert. So there's 2 books published right now. Third book will be out in early 2016. Information on all my books can be found on my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. Now that's hard to remember, so if you Google Dancing on a Stamp, you will get to my website. On my website, I have information on my books. You can download a free excerpt from each book. You can watch a book video, and there's links to my social media sites there: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. You can actually, on my website, you can dial into all the previous radio shows I've been on. There's recordings for all of them. This is number 64 for me.
Wow.
So you can listen to all my previous shows. And I have buy links on my website to all the popular online bookstores like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Amazon UK, where you can just click on that and it takes you right to the page where my books are available, and a couple of clicks and you can have my books. So that's the best source of information. My email address is in my website. And if anyone has another question that hasn't been answered, or they have a comment, please send me your comment or question by email, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can.
Brilliant stuff. That's fantastic, Garnet. Thanks a lot for coming on. Much appreciated. I definitely think we'll have to do a part 2, and we'll do a longer interview because there's more questions to be done. So just stay with us there for a minute, and we're going to be going to a musical break. After the musical break, myself and Steve are going to be talking about moving from your thought process from 3D to 4D. And we were talking about this on the United We Strike Marathon yesterday, and we're going to go through it again because it's very important. Again, Garnet, thanks for coming on. Just stay with us there for a minute, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Yes, we're back. That was the Hollies. I'm Alive. Yes.
You are indeed.
I am. I'm sitting here in the flesh.
Yeah,
you can. I just want to say I do apologise if anyone, Samantha in the chat room there said she reckons I was rewording questions. Sometimes we have a lot of questions that we didn't get to ask from both this chat room and from PIR that I've had to send over. I sent them over to Garnet there on Skype because we didn't get to ask them. But I mean, look. Does an oak tree have an individual soul separate from the next oak tree in the woods? I just figured, well, I asked, does an oak tree or a plant have a soul? Because if one has a soul, then obviously the tree next to it, I'm guessing it's going to be separate. The same as a human being can't share a soul.
We'll do a part 2. Garnet said he'll do a part 2, and we'll do a full interview with Garnet, and then we can do all them questions. Plus, he's probably going to go off and speak to Albert about a few things that he heard on the show tonight. Anyway, now while we have a few minutes, during the week we're doing a bit of research regarding 3D and 4D thinking. And one of the things that I came across during the week was confirmation of what we talk about, the fluid belief system. So just before we talk about the 3D, 4D thinking, because remember, we have to move away from ego and ignorance and move towards humility and wisdom. That's what we have to do. That's the plan for all of us. Okay? So how do we do that? Well, the ego and ignorance is 3D thinking, and the wisdom and humility is 4D thinking. So, Steve, do you want to give us a reminder on what our fluid belief system is?
Yeah, well, as I said on the UWS marathon that we were on yesterday, well, our fluid belief system is this in a nutshell: that someone tells me a piece of information, like I know they love this on our chat room, so I'm going to say the Earth is round. So therefore, I go along from childhood believing the Earth is round. I see pictures everywhere. I see footage on TV. I see all these movies. The Earth is round. The Earth is round. The Earth is round. Now, When I'm defending my belief system, my 3D belief system, someone says to me, the Earth's flat. And I go, what? The Earth's flat. Oh, okay. I then go, no, there's no way. I get up on my high horse and I defend it. Because there's no possible way the Earth is flat. It's round. I've seen the pictures. I've seen NASA footage from space. So therefore, I know it's round. And who do you think you are trying to convince me otherwise? You put in some expletives here. You don't know what you're talking about. Everyone knows it's round. And, there's the what we're referring to as the 3D belief system.
Excellent. So what we have to do is we have to move away. Our fluid belief system is changing your belief. If new information comes in, then you just change it with the new information. Obviously, you have to make sure that the information is valid, researched, and it's correct. And then you just change. Now, during the week, the article I came across was on the in5d.com website. And it said here, a concept and possibility known as paradox also becomes available in the present time of 4D consciousness. Paradox simply means that what was true just a moment ago may not be true right now, and what was false a moment ago may no longer be false. Instead of applying rigid, pre-existing definitions to any experience, we choose our preferred version and vibration in every moment. So as we move into 4D consciousness in present time with the power of choice and responsibility and the flexibility of paradox, the ability to alter the game to enhance our happiness and well-being becomes available. Interestingly, 4D consciousness will not be a long-term option after the shift clears away the rigid structures of 3D consciousness. Now, in other words, if you're stuck in 3D and you have a closed mind, right, then obviously that's 3D thinking. And what we have to do is move into 4D thinking to eventually get into 5D. It sounds woo-woo, but to be honest with you, forget about the 5D thing. Since myself and Steve have been working with the fluid belief system, it's opened our minds to so many different things, right? Because we're not stuck in this bloody structured belief system where people are saying, oh, that's the way it is, that's the way it is. And their minds are open. Now, they're not open to the stage where we believe everything. As I say, you have to back it up with facts. And if somebody says, what you just said is wrong, here's the new information, here's the evidence, fantastic. That's what it's all about. But unfortunately, with ignorance and ego in 3D, that prevents us from moving on. Okay? Now, ego is part of us. Alright? That's just the way we are. But we should be controlling the ego. The ego shouldn't control us. Okay? And ignorance is a lack of information. So we have to be aware of that. So if you really want to get into 4D thinking and move away from 3D, open your mind, get a fluid belief system, and just take on, if new information comes in, and just accept the fact that we don't know everything. We learn from everybody. It doesn't matter who the person is, and it doesn't matter, if you take somebody like a solicitor, who spent years and years of training, and then somebody comes up who's not a trained solicitor, but they might have information regarding the law, you might get the arrogance of that solicitor saying, who the hell are you telling me what about the law, right? But maybe the solicitor doesn't know about something that this person does. I know as an IT person, I've learned from all different people across the board. Some people weren't even IT, and they showed me things that were IT. Brilliant. I'm more than happy to accept that, because I accept the fact I don't know everything, and I'm learning all the time. It's as simple as that. So you have to, keep the ego intact, keep it down, and humility, bring in the humility, and say thanks. Some people can't do that because they feel that, not knowing something about their subject matter is a weakness. No, it's not a weakness. You can't know everything. That's just the way it is. So just, as I say, 4D thinking, fluid belief system, 3D thinking, ignorance and ego. So that's really it. And that's going to be your path into opening your mind to other things. Obviously, as Garnet says, stay away from the negative, because it's only going to pull you down. Simple as that. Right, now, before we finish up, next week we have Stephanie Rolfe on. And Stephanie Rolfe, we came across on a website, and it might sound funny. It's all about ET harvesting and the reptilians and stuff like that. And I know some people are going to say, oh well, here we go. Here's the conspiracy theories and everything else. But let's get Stephanie on and listen to what she has to say for us before we start being prejudgmental with her coming on. Let's hear what she has to say, because some of the information she says, you kind of think, well, okay. And we had Chris Thomas on our show a couple of years ago telling us the same thing about being very careful. So let's, as a subject matter, is quite interesting. The other thing is we have Karen Quinton-Stado coming in. We're going to be talking to Karen about the end of month predictions, all about September. So we're going to be doing that. So before we have time...
Is that Karen on the chat room from Oregon?
Oregon. Karen,
not California,
yeah,
Oregon.
Karen on the chat room now. Karen's going to be on next week, and we're going to be talking to Karen about end time of September and what they're predicting. So anyway, we're running out of time. For myself, Alan James, take it easy, stay safe, have a good week, and keep us informed of any news. Take care. Bye bye.
Okay, and from myself, Stephen George, it's been a hoot, and we'll do it all again next week. If you're listening on the People's Internet Radio stream, stay tuned for Vin. If you're listening on the OAM stream, we're going to say goodnight, and the podcast will be uploaded shortly if you want to check it out again. And we do it all again in 7 days, so until then, take care. Good night.